How's she going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Winter Wonderland in Grampie's workshop. Yeah, kind of a nice day today. Didn't know what it was going to do. Started out being sunny, then it clouded over, and now it's snowing. It was snowing pretty good there for a while. But anyway, we're getting a little bit of winter, but after all, it's January. And I got bad news about Grampie's workshop. If you remember last fall, I had my son Derek come out and give me a hand. We installed the old heat pump that we had in the camp. I changed the heat pump, put a new heat pump in the camp, took the old one out, and we installed it in the shop. And it's been working great, I have to say. And it's some nice going into the shop. I mean, you come out today, like today it's probably -5, maybe -4, something like that. Not real cold, but before, like, you'd go in the shop and it would be cold in there. It would be maybe sometimes below 0, but most times, you know, around 0 degrees. And the tools were cold to hold on to and things like that, and the wood would get frost in it and moisture in it. So if you're making wood projects during the winter, you know, the wood would change shape, change dimension as it warmed up. So yeah, it was no good to work in the shop during the wintertime, basically, on wood projects. And it was not comfortable to work in the shop on mechanical type projects in the wintertime because it's so cold. So anyway, we put the heat pump in there and it was working great. Nice and warm. You know, I could set the temperature whatever I want. I had the temperature set around 10 or 11 degrees, and that was, I found, just nice for working temperatures. The tools weren't too cold to work with, and it wasn't making any condensation. It was great. I loved it. But I guess, you know, too much of a good thing, no good for anybody. I got problems with the heat pump that we put in the shop. Now, I have to say, I have to make some clarification here. The heat pump was 15 years old, eh? That's why we replaced it in the camp, because I figured it wasn't going to last much longer. So when they disconnected in the camp, if anybody knows anything about heat pumps, the heart and soul of the heat pump is the coolant, refrigerant coolant that's in the coils. And the way you decommission the heat pump is you take all that coolant and let it go into the outside unit. You drain it into the outside unit, and then you vacuum out the system to make sure all that coolant is out of the inside head unit and out into the outside unit, and that the vacuum is good so that the coolant doesn't leak out, because the coolant is bad in the environment, so you don't want that to escape. Plus it's expensive, and it's you have to get a professional to replace it and all that stuff. So anyway, so yeah, the guy who's changing the heat pump, installing a new one, he decommissioned the old system and, you know, withdrew all the coolant into the outside unit, sealed it all off good. So then I stored that outside unit in the shop for about 6-8 months before we decided exactly where I was going to put it in the shop and had the wall insulated and everything. So then my son Derek came out, and Derek has got all the instrumentation necessary to commission a heat pump. So we set it all up, installed the head unit outside, inside, put the outside unit on the stand outside, and then Derek put his vacuum pump on it and vacuumed all out. It held a really good vacuum. It held the vacuum for about 4 hours, never dropped a smidgen. But anyways, we released the coolant into the system, and we started the system up. And I'm going to say we installed this in September-ish probably. So for September and October, it cooled the shop nicely. It was making nice cool, and then from, say, the mid part of October through until about just the week before Christmas, it heated the shop great. It was working great. But I was noticing that the outside unit was frosting up. So when I check online, why does your cooling fins on the outside unit frost up? There's a bunch of different reasons. One of them, they say, is airflow, not getting enough airflow. Well, I think where I have the outside unit installed, it gets a lot of airflow because there's always a breeze blowing there. It's about a foot away from the building, lots of clearance all the way around it. So the airflow, I don't think, was an issue. Another thing they say is low coolant. Well, I'm going to say, I don't want to point fingers here because that's certainly not my intent, but when you decommission the system, I'm sure there was some coolant that escaped. I'm sure there was. So, you know, the coolant may have dropped a little bit. When you recommission the system, like we did at the back of the shop here, I'm sure you lose some coolant. You know, that's to be expected. Not much, but just a psht when you open the valve. Now, one thing that we did do, we cut about 4 feet off the lines between the outside unit and the head unit when we installed it in the shop. So Derek and I were both thinking, well, Derek mainly because he knows way more about this than what I do, but Derek was thinking with the shorter lines you didn't need as much coolant, so that little psst of coolant that we lost when we recommissioned the system really shouldn't have made any difference. And when he drew a vacuum on it, it held the vacuum, like I say, for about 4 hours, so no problem there. All the gauges and instrumentation looked good on the system, and it worked great for 3 months there, and well, may as well say put it in September, so we'll say 4 months. It worked good for 4 months until just before Christmas when the outside unit frosted up. So it could be air quotes, could be low on coolant. Another thing I saw when I looked up why would it freeze up is because the outside, the heat pumps, and again I'm not an expert in this, I'm just sort of information that I garnered over the past 15 years of working and living with the heat pump. The heat pump has a cycle that it goes through. It heats, of course, and then it'll reverse the flow to more or less defrost any possible freeze up that might be in the outside unit. And there's also a temperature sensor in the outside unit. There's also a humidity sensor in the outside unit, and there's apparently control boards in there that monitor these inputs and try to maintain a good humidity in the outside unit to prevent frost from building up. So one of the things they say why you could have frost build up in your outside unit is because this control that's in the unit itself, a control board, part of the computer system that's in it, is malfunctioning. So first thing I did when this started to frost up was I contacted Derek and asked him, if he had any information, any ideas. He was basically the same point in the analysis as that I was, in the fact that, well, it could be a little bit low on coolant, but chances are maybe one of the control boards is bad. So he was going to come out and do some checks and whatnot, but I said, just hold off on that for a sec, Derek. I want to do some more checking. So when I investigated, I figured, a good way to do this would be to get a serviceman to come here and have a look at it. But when I investigated that, a serviceman was going to cost, well, I think they charge $85 an hour. I could be wrong in that, but plus travel time, and we're an hour and a half, well, 2-hour round trip to get here from wherever. So it was going to be pretty expensive to get a serviceman to come out here. And then I figured if the serviceman was to come out here, do some checks, he would probably maybe top it up with coolant, so he'd charge me for the coolant. Who knows what that would cost. And if that didn't work, then you'd have to come back, and if you came back, that's another service fee that I have to pay, and I expect to pay that. Nobody does anything for nothing anymore, and I don't expect them to. I mean, that's just, you can't make a living doing that. So if you were to come back the second time and then say, okay, yeah, that control board is definitely bad, then he's going to have to order a control board. The unit is 15 years old. First of all, can we get a control board? Secondly, is the board really bad? And thirdly, what is the cost of this board? So to get a repairman, basically what I'm saying here, to get a repairman to come and do a review and a check of my heat pump, I'm figuring it was going to cost me significant amount of money. So I decided I wasn't going to do that. So in the end, what I did was, I ordered another heat pump. Now, when I get the heat pump, we're going to install it. The heat pump's not here yet, but I'm going to finish this video when we get the other heat pump, and I'll explain a lot about that new heat pump when it shows up. But for now, I guess all you need to know is that the heat pump at the camp, it's failing. It's still putting a little bit of heat in the shop, but not much. It's at 9 degrees there this morning in the shop. But I'm going to take you around back and show you the outside unit, how frosted up it is. I don't think it's long for this world. So when we get the new heat pump, we'll install it, and I'll do a good review about the heat pump then to add it at the end of this video. But come with me now till I show you the outside unit on the heat pump and just show you the status of what it is. And maybe you have some ideas. If you have experience with heat pumps, maybe you have some ideas of what the problem could be. Anyway, there's my unit. She's frosted up, boys, I'm telling you. I ain't lying. That's the side of the outside coil, and if you can see here at the back, I'm not sure how good the lighting's going to be, but lots of frost built up there. Now, excuse the noise from that fan. If you can look inside there too, not sure how well you can see, but all down the side here the frost is built up pretty well all across the back and along the bottom. Now, before Christmas, when this frosted up the first time, it wasn't all that cold out, so what I did was I come out here with my heat gun and I defrosted the coils. And what happened at the bottom pan of the outside unit, the bottom pan there was about an inch of ice built up, and I was thinking, okay, what's happening is moisture is condensing on the coil, falling down in the pan and not draining properly and freezing. So when I got it all clear of ice, I drilled a bunch more holes in the bottom pan to make sure that the condensation that formed on it could fall and drip out through the bottom pan. So once again, condensation is eating my lunch here. So anyway, it's obvious that it's not that problem, because although there is ice under the unit, it tells me that the condensation is dripping out and freezing on the ground. But the frost that's built up on the coil, you know, that's telling me that there's something wrong. Either there's a control board malfunctioning or it's low on coolant. But certainly it's not an issue with airflow. But anyway, so that's the status of my heat pump. She's toast, I think. Like I say, I have a new one ordered. It's the middle of January right now. They say the delivery time is 3 to 5 weeks. So this video will be continued at a later date. So yeah, when I get the other heat pump, I think I'll do a separate video about that separate heat pump. So this video then will just be about the failing state of my heat pump in the shop right now. It's still working. Like, I'm in the shop right now, and the thermometer here behind me says 10 degrees, and that's what the heat pump is set at. So amazingly, even with all that frost buildup on the outside coil, still making heat here in the shop. And so, you know, you can't really blame the Daikin heat pump. It's, I think, performing admirably considering how sick it is. But anyways, we're going to get a new heat pump and install that. And you know, the heat pump is not cheap, and I'll talk about the price of that when I do the video on the heat pump. But I had spent so much time and energy and effort to insulate the shop, and money, I must say, because it wasn't cheap to do all this. I just figured I've gone too far just to let it go, so that's why I ended up breaking into my bank and coming out with some cash to buy the other heat pump. And we weren't ready to buy another heat pump. It's going to really, you know, be hard for us to spend that money to buy the heat pump, but it just seemed like that's what had to be done. So anyways, appreciate you watching. If you have any ideas about what may be causing my heat pump to go bad like this, please let me know. I'd appreciate some input on that. And just talking about heat pumps, exchanging ideas, you know, how yours works, how mine works, you know, what you've observed, what you've seen, that all that information gets locked away, and at some point in time it could be very helpful to either me or to you or the viewers. So thanks for leaving me some comments about that. And in the meantime, have a good week wherever you are. Stay warm. And we'll talk to you.